Good morning. This is a big and interrelated topic, so I'm going to be referring to notes. So I found out yesterday when I went online that if I had accidentally used the term neurodivergent innocently to describe myself, I would have stepped right on a landmine in the culture wars. And I just do not want to go there for reasons that will come clear if I ever start my series on memetics. But I do want to talk about the labels of autism, neuroatypical, which is the one that I use. I sometimes say autistic tendencies as well. I'm going to use the analogy of duck autistic, and I'm going to talk about gatekeeping and the idea of special snowflake syndrome and bullying related to these two things. So, the way I see it, autism is a specific diagnosis. Autistic spectrum disorder, I believe it is. If I look at myself in relation to other people who are diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, I see so much resemblance that I have no real practical doubt that that's describing me as well. But I'm intellectually honest enough to know I'm not an expert. I can be wrong. I can accept that. That's fine. So I choose the term neuroatypical as being less specific. Okay, it could cover someone who has very similar tendencies, but is not technically autistic. But you sort of know when you hear it that people with autism, Asperger's syndrome, they're smack bang in the middle of that region. So I think it's a good term in that regard. It has a literal meaning that's pretty obvious. Neuro and atypical. Your brain doesn't work the way that it typically does in most people, and that is very evident in my life. So I'm very confident that I'm neuroatypical, and I'll argue that one. I won't argue to death that I'm definitely autistic spectrum disorder, but neuroatypical is not negotiable if you understand my experience in life as well as I do. I use the analogy of duck autism. They say it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck. It's probably a duck. I also like to point out that if you saw something that walked like a duck and quacked like a duck, you would not expect it to spend $1,000 seeing a specialized psychiatrist and go through hours of stressful and exhausting interviews to prove it's a duck before you let it swim on the pond with the other ducks. So, as I just alluded to, the motivation. Diagnosis is expensive in multiple ways, and the stress and the energy really plays into another situation that I happen to have, which is that I've been diagnosed with a severe chronic illness. I have a fraction of the capacity of most people. So my motivation is that, first of all, if I say autistic tendencies, I'm hoping that people will have some idea from their life experience of what that means. Right? That I'm hoping that there might be some communication benefit, there might be some kind of understanding, at least from a subset of people, rather than just ignorant judgment. And frankly, I just want to be included with people who resemble me far more than most people do. And I'm sure that I know a difficulty with getting that initial empathetic connection is one of the things that we struggle with. But if you just take a moment and reflect on how isolating it can be And ask yourself, if someone has that same isolation for the same reasons, wouldn't you want them to be included? Don't you understand why they want to be included and just feel like they belong as part of something? So, I take on these labels, even though I dislike labels for reasons of it compromising your rationality, which I'll also do in another video. Because it's so desperate, urgent sometimes to just be included. And that's why gatekeeping bothers me. And if I can ask, it's not even a rhetorical question, I really don't get it. Why? Why gatekeep this? It's not an exclusive A-list party that neurotypical people are desperate to be a part of. It's not, doesn't have any perks as far as I'm aware, except that you get to associate with people who are similar. And the consequences of gatekeeping are so just hurtful. There's no benefit. It just hurts the people who are wrongly excluded. And, it's very similar to the special Snowflake Syndrome. Like people say, oh, all right, autistic, that person must have special Snowflake Syndrome. That's just intellectual cowardice. The person hasn't actually thought about it. They're just taking the easy way out. And the thing to really refute that, sort of in human terms, not in pure logic or anything, but do you really think that a place full of people who are autistic is a good place for neurotypical snowflakes to hang out? Look, I resemble all of the following characteristics I'm going to say. I don't mean this as an insult. It's just a well-known, at least perception from neurotypical people, right? But we tend to be inflexible and blunt and unempathetic. We have empathy, but, that initial empathetic connection is often hard won. So why on earth would someone who's just a special snowflake want to hang out there? It's like a blast furnace. So yeah, I do this partly as a way of apology, because I know that some people get emotional about things and afraid maybe that people will use autism as an excuse for just being an asshole and, take that all the way to the bank or something. But just know that when I'm saying that I'm autistic, I actually believe it. And I think it's justified given how many things I have in common, such as flat affect, difficulty making eye contact, difficulty with empathy, directness, unusual obsession with literal truth, being very direct and blunt, what I have to say to people, and just like having that effect where people all school together effortlessly and I can't school with them no matter how hard I try. And I just want to say, in this video, once up front, I will not engage with bullies of the gatekeeping variety or the neurotypical special snowflake variety. Either politely and constructively engage in conversation on the topics that I've brought up, or just don't bother. There's nothing for you here.